Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 964. Thursday, November 21st, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, as usual, another big day today of news, and so let's go ahead and get to it. The very first thing I want to talk about is looking a little bit more. I wish I read Italian. I wish I could speak and read Italian, but I don't, because I'd love to read the actual Italian papers. Because there's so much coming out of there right now about Spygate and everything like that. But a lot of these links to these Italian papers, I can't read them. But fortunately, this one paper I've been following, the Atlantico out of Italy, they do have a, well, I don't think they, but someone is translating it into English, so you can actually see the English translation. So I've been looking at a couple of the English translations of the last two articles that have come out from this Atlantico paper in Italy. So we just talked yesterday or day before yesterday about one of those. So here is some more information coming out of Atlantico in Italy regarding the Spygate and the Italian part of Spygate, I guess we should say. So they're actually reporting now that Stephen Rowe, who of course Stephen Rowe is the Swiss lawyer who was friend and business partner of Joseph Mifsud. They're reporting that Stephen Rowe gave Attorney General Barr and John Durham a tape, I should say the tape that he had of Mifsud, and he provided that tape to them by traveling to the United States, because he actually lives in Switzerland. He traveled to the United States, to Washington, D.C. on July the 26th of this year. And that is where he provided the tape, the audio tape, to Barr and Durham. And that explains, just as we were trying to figure out a few weeks back, did Barr and Durham go to Italy to get information, and that's what drove them to go there, or is because they had some information and that's what motivated them to personally go there? And it was some speculation, because there's two tapes that we're talking about here. There's one audio tape, which is just a tape that Mifsud did with his lawyer, Stephen Rowe. And this was done back in 2018. Then there is the other tape, which is the tape which was done by Italian intelligence or police services when Mifsud came to them looking for protection. So these are the two tapes we're talking about. So the first, what we're talking about here, the Stephen Rowe tape, the one that Stephen Rowe gave to Barr and Durham on July of 26th in Washington, D.C., was the tape that he had with Mifsud when he was representing Mifsud as both a friend and as an attorney. Now Rowe is saying he hasn't talked to Mifsud in quite some time, and he believes that he has legal representation in London. So what happens here is, obviously, Stephen Rowe comes to D.C., gives Barr and Durham this tape that he had, where Mifsud is explaining, his situation and possibly his role in what he was doing. And we have to assume that he must talk about having some ties to Western intelligence, because in the interviews following this sort of, I guess you'd say, deposition, Stephen Rowe was interviewed, and he was asked, well, is Mifsud a Russian agent? And he was like, no, Mifsud's not a Russian agent. If anything, he would be a Western intelligence asset. So we can assume that this tape would have something where Mifsud might be talking about his association with Western intelligence, not Russian intelligence. So we don't know exactly what's on that tape, and Rowe has never stated what's on that tape. So anyway, but we do know that Rowe came to D.C. July 26, 2019, gave this tape to Barr and Durham. Then Barr and Durham went to Italy. Now, by that time, it had already become public that the Italian law enforcement or intelligence had a taped deposition with Mifsud. They had their own taped deposition. This is when Mifsud came to them looking for protection, because I guess he feared his life was in danger. So now Barr and Durham actually have two tapes. They have the one Stephen Rowe provided to them, and they have the one that Italian intelligence provided to them. So that's the two tapes that they have, to our knowledge. And of course, we know that they also came into possession of two of Mifsud's phones, which we now know that they did not get from Italian intelligence, that they had before they went to Italy. So not sure where they got the two phones, whether they got them in London. Some people are speculating that they got them in London. Some are speculating that they actually got them in D.C., that they may have been in possession of maybe Horowitz, that he discovered them during his investigation, or the FBI had them, or someone, State Department maybe had them. But it's looking more and more like those phones were not given to Barr and Durham by Italian intelligence. Italian intelligence did provide them with this taped interview with Mifsud, but not the phones. The phones apparently they had before they went to Italy. So anyway, that's what they're holding right now that we know of, and there could be other things. Now, another thing that they're reporting, which is very interesting, they're reporting in the Atlantico that the number 2 man in Italian Secret Service, the number 2 man in Italian Secret Service, is now been identified, according to Atlantico, as the person who was assisting Mifsud, assisting him and hiding him, certainly. Whether he was assisting him in 2016 with his activities, that's not what they're not saying that, but they're not saying that didn't happen either. What they are saying is that the number 2 man in Italian Secret Service is the one who was helping Mifsud hide. And that may have something to do with the fact that Mifsud has information that could be damaging to this number 2 man, as well as the president he served under, Conte. Not only that, what makes this even stranger is that this number 2 man, who has been the one from this Italian Secret Service, who's been the one who's been assisting Mifsud, met with Gina Haspel in Rome in October of 2019, just a few weeks ago. The number 2 man in Italian Secret Service, the man who's been assisting Mifsud, met with Gina Haspel just a few weeks ago, October 2019, in Rome. Keep in mind, this would be after the well-publicized visit to Rome by Barr and Durham. So why would Gina Haspel go and meet with the number 2 man in Italian Secret Service, the guy who's been helping Mifsud for apparently quite some time? Why would Gina Haspel go meet with him in October of 2019 after Barr and Durham go over to Italy and acquire this taped deposition from Italian intelligence or police services there? What the hell is Gina Haspel doing there? Sounds like maybe she went over there to try to get her story together, or to see what she could learn about what Durham and Mifsud may have learned, or Durham and Barr may have learned when they were in Italy just several weeks before. Don't you think that's pretty intriguing? Why is Gina Haspel going to Italy several weeks, just a few weeks after Barr and Durham go to Italy and get the taped deposition? Then they come back to Washington. Then we hear about the 2 phones. Then the next thing you know, Gina Haspel is off to Italy to meet with this number 2 man from Italian Secret Service, who we're told by the Atlantico is the man who's been assisting Mifsud in hiding out, and likely was, associating with or working with Mifsud going back to the previous administration, the Conti administration. Now we find out that, yesterday we found out that Durham himself is heading back to Italy in the first week of December. Maybe Durham found out that Gina Haspel went and paid a visit there in Rome, and maybe he wants to go, in addition to other things, go find out if he can talk to this number 2 man in the Italian Secret Service and find out what he's doing, talking to Haspel, what kind of things are going on there, and exactly what this individual knows about Mifsud or his whereabouts. Now, the Atlantico is reporting that that Durham is headed back to Italy for the sole purpose of talking to Mifsud. So if this number 2 man in Italy, number 2 Secret Service man, is the guy who's been helped hiding Mifsud and has been working with or associated with Mifsud, then maybe Durham is going to be meeting with him, which would make sense why Gina Haspel would want to talk to this guy before he meets with Durham, again, to try to get the story straight. Something very fishy going on here, and there has been for the longest time with Gina Haspel. As I have said, many of you have stated in the comments section, Gina Haspel needs to be seriously interrogated. She needs to get the hot light treatment. She was the station chief in London when all this stuff was going down. And we've heard from intelligence officials, former station chiefs, who say when something is happening in your territory and you are the station chief, you are informed, so you don't step on anybody's toes. So Gina Haspel had to know everything that was going on in London in 2016 regarding the frame-up. She was one of John Brennan's hand-picked proteges. Why in the world is she the head of the CIA right now? These are the questions that kind of drive you crazy. But that's what we have. Okay, it looks like it's been a yesterday, in fact this whole week, has been very bad for Hunter Biden. He's not just had one bad day this week, he's had 3. And I think that Thursday will make 4 bad days for Hunter Biden. Here's how Hunter Biden's week has gone. So we learned this week from the hearings, from multiple witnesses, that the Obama administration did know and was concerned about Hunter Biden's role on the board of Burisma. Multiple witnesses have testified that they were aware of it, and it did look bad. Then we have the head of Burisma indicted this week in Ukraine. We have a Ukrainian official saying that Biden was receiving off-the-books payments from Burisma in the millions. Then we have a Ukrainian politician who's one of the people who've been pushing for this investigation and are now commenting on the indictment, saying in a newspaper story that the money paid to Hunter Biden came from duplicitous criminal activity. The money was raised through criminal means and money laundering. And the evidence for this will be clearly laid out in the indictment. Money paid to Hunter Biden came from duplicitous criminal activity. The money was raised through criminal means and money laundering. It's in the indictment. And of course, once the head of Burisma is indicted, he then goes missing. Now you would think, being indicted, he would have been arrested shortly thereafter, but apparently after indicting and prior to being able to arrest him, he disappears. Nikolai Zoloveski is his name. Nikolai Zoloveski is the owner of Burisma. He's been indicted and he's gone missing. He's gone missing. A lot of high rollers tied to him and this corruption scheme, not just the Bidens. Well, and to add to the bad week that Hunter Biden is having, that DNA test that he had to take to prove whether he is the father of this woman out in Arkansas has come back positive. Hunter Biden is the father of this child which is going to be born to this Arkansas woman. So it looks like Hunter Biden has got a new kid, and creepy Uncle Joe just had a new grandson, or he's about to have a new grandson. That's usually bad news. That'll result in some alimony payments, some back alimony payments and various things, and it certainly doesn't look good. There you go. I mean, it always sucks when someone claims that you got them pregnant and then you go do a DNA test and they find out it's true. It's never happened to me, but I know people it's happened to. One of my best friends, it happened to him. 7 years after he had a short relationship with this girl, 7 years later, he gets a letter in the mail from an attorney advising him that they think he's got a 7-year-old son. He goes and takes this DNA test, and they comes back positive. And so he was happy to know he had a son, but he wasn't happy to know that he didn't find out he had a son until the kid was 7 years old. Now the kid's probably, in his 20s. And finally, we have the Burisma indictment, which now this is not just bad for Hunter Biden and Daddy-O. This is bad for Democrats in general. The Burisma indictment that I was just speaking of, the Burisma indictment reveals that former Ukraine President Yanukovych illegally obtained $17.4 billion and laundered it through an investment fund. I believe that's Franklin Templeton, which has close ties to the Democratic Party. Now we know why the Democrats are having this show trial about Ukraine. It's almost like the Mueller investigation, where they had the Mueller investigation in a large part, not just to damage Trump or impeach Trump or get rid of Trump, but in a lot of ways, so Uncle Bob could protect the evidence, secure the evidence, which would show the guilty criminal activity of the Democrats and the Right Reverend Clinton and others. In the same way, these hearings on Trump and Ukraine are serving the same purpose, because Schiff is running the hearings, and the people that the Republicans would want to call, which would expose the crimes of Hunter Biden and the Kerrys and the Democrats and all the things that were going on via Ukraine. None of that stuff can be looked at or unearthed, because Schiff, just like Uncle Bob, is safeguarding, blocking, protecting the incriminating evidence. It's almost the same type of thing. It's not going to work. Just like the Mueller investigation ended with a whimper, and now there's a real investigation into what actually did happen, the same will be true here. Eventually, this thing is going to run off the rails or run out of gas, one of the two, and it will all go away, and then someone will start looking into the other stuff. I believe Durham's already looking into the Ukraine activities going on in Ukraine in 2016. That's certainly going to be something that's looked at. But I think that there'll be more of an intense look at the Democrats and their actual corruption and involvement in Ukraine, which goes all the way to the tippy top. Yes, and the Bidens, well, I mean, definitely Hunter Biden had a bad week, as I just showed you. Now, his Daddy-O, Quid Pro Quo Joe, is not having much better of a day or a week than his son had, because Quid Pro Quo Joe's campaign sent out an email for fundraising. They sent out a fundraising email, and the email says, quote, supposedly from Uncle Joe, "I'm leaving the 5th Democrat debate now. I'm leaving the 5th Democrat debate now. I hope I made you proud out there, and I hope I made it clear to the world why our campaign is so important. This is the fundraising email that he just sent out about the fact that he's just leaving the 5th Democratic debate. It's over. He's leaving, and he's hoping he made everybody proud. Now, the only problem with this email that they sent out, this fundraising email that they sent out from Quid Pro Quo Joe, talking about having just left the 5th debate or whatever. The only problem is they sent the email out several hours before the debate. Oh my goodness. They sent it out several hours before, showing it's fake. And then once everybody picked up on it and they got caught and they couldn't retract it, then they had to come out and say, oh, well, sorry about that. We hit the wrong key. We hit the send key. Oh, a few hours too early. But hey, it's all good because Joe is going to have a great debate. And you're all going to be very proud of everything he says. Now send us some money. It just shows the disingenuousness of all these people. This is how they lie. They lie about a lot of just little things that really aren't big things. It's the culture of lying that they exist in. I'm leaving the 5th. Why does he have to say I'm leaving? Why does he have to lie? You see, it's the cases like this that drive you nuts. You don't really have to lie about something. Why doesn't he just say, well, I'm preparing right now. I'm prepping for the debate tonight. I'm gonna bring it home. I'm gonna have a great debate. Hey, here's a shout out to send us some money. This is a fundraiser, and we need money to stay in the race and that type of thing. It's like you don't really need to do this, but what it shows is that they have this prepared hours and hours in advance. Okay, so they don't know if he made people proud or what if he had a horrible night, which he probably will because he always does. They're assuming that he made people proud and had a good debate, but he's not. But at the time, he would not be leaving the debate, right? So it's just classic one mistake, one error after another. Not by just Quid Pro Quo Joe, but his whole campaign team sucks. I mean, it's just, and if you can't put together a campaign, you can't run the country, okay? If you can't put together a campaign, you can't run the country. That's as simple as that. Okay, so a lot of people, talking about the Sondland interview yesterday. Well, clearly from the what I saw of the hearings of Sondland, I didn't see everything, but from what I did see, I could honestly say that Sondland looks to me like a bit of a whack job. And I did watch the clip where Mike Turner pretty much pulls the truth out of him when he gets Sondland to just admit that President Trump never told him that military aid was tied to the investigation of the Bidens. Now, for everything that he said in his opening statement, for every question was asked of him all day long for hours and hours by all those people, the only thing that really matters is that. That's it. At the end of the day, that is really what his entire testimony comes down to. Trump never told Sondland that the military aid was tied to the investigation of the Bidens. That's it. That's the bottom line. That's the headline of his entire afternoon spent there in Washington testifying. That's it. My goodness. And we also have Mike Pence's chief of staff coming out right after his testimony saying that the conversation that he suggested happened about investigating the Bidens never happened. He says Sondland is lying. So here we have Mike Pence, essentially through his spokesman, saying that Sondland is lying when he said, I believe in his opening statement, and then he was asked about it later, about this conversation with Mike Pence. And Pence says it didn't happen, that it's a lie. And I can believe it. Because, like I said, Sondland to me looks like a bit of a cracker, a bit of a whack job. He doesn't seem, kind of, I don't know, kind of a scatterbrained dude, if you ask me. We also have a report today in the Gateway Pundit that the FBI is now seeking an interview with the fake CIA whistleblower, Eric Sharamella. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Maybe they watched my TowerGate video from 3 or 4 days ago when the title of my TowerGate video was that Schiff, Sharamella, and Vindman need to be interrogated. Yes, they do. They need to be interrogated. Look, it's pretty simple. I think we can tell what happened here. Vindman was the source for Sharamella. That's basically, it's that simple. And it was a plot, and they knew they could go to the bug-eyed fool, and he could put that together for them, advise them, his staff could advise them on how to go about doing it so that they could put this plot together. Schiff, Vindman, and Sharamella all need to get the hot light treatment. And hopefully the director of the FBI, who I don't have any confidence in whatsoever, is no way, shape, or form involved in this, and hopefully this is being directed by Barr and not the current FBI director. So let's now go to the Lee Smith book, which most of you know. I'm now on chapter 5 of the Lee Smith book, and I'm going to give you an update now on what is in chapter 5. So chapter 5 is called The Fusion Russians. So chapter 5 of Lee Smith's book, about half of the chapter goes into deep, deep background on Confusion GPS. Now, I did a deep background dive on Confusion GPS well over a year and a half ago, probably, and I found a lot of the same things. I think Lee Smith obviously puts more detail in there and finds a couple things I didn't even know about. But clearly, it's why I described Confusion GPS a long time ago is the people you go to run a smear campaign, because that's what they do. They manufacture a smear campaign. They create a false narrative, and then they pay reporters to publish the garbage, of which is a little bit of truth, which is innocent, nothing wrong with the truth, and they wrap it in 99% lies. Tiny bit of truth wrapped in lies, and then they peddle that to the media. And what they do smear campaigns. They destroy people. They destroy political careers and various other things. They do smear campaigns. That's what they do. And Lee Smith does a very deep dive. And it's important that he does this because when he explains the role that Confusion GPS played in framing Trump, you know, it's important to know that background so that you understand as he's explaining what all that they're involved in, that this is not just, you know, hypothetical or something that's one-off or just something Glenn Simpson just happened to do this time. It's their standard operating procedure. It's what they do. And the Clinton campaign knew when they hired Confusion GPS what they do. They don't just do a little opposition research and point out the fact that there may have been a mistress here and there. There may have been some late alimony payments. There may have been a DUI. There may have been something like that. No. This is not what Fusion GPS does. Fusion GPS manufactures really ugly, dark smear campaigns for the purpose of complete and pure destruction. That's what they do, and there's a hard evidence and a long history of this being the case, particularly with Glenn Simpson. So with that in mind, he talks a lot about, in this chapter, the role that Confusion GPS himself, particularly Glenn Simpson, plays in some of these plots. Now, what I really love about this is that he talks about the 6 known suspicious approaches made to the Trump team. And it's the same ones that I've been pointing out. It's in my timeline. I've talked about them in my TowerGate videos, and that's why I like Lee Smith so much. He and I obviously are in the same wavelength. Just about everything I'm reading in his book is in my timeline. It's exactly we reach a lot of the same conclusions. We look at a lot of the same things. We're led to a lot of the same conclusions, and maybe that's why I like reading his book so much. It sort of validates what I've been saying and what's in my timeline. And so he points out, as I have, all the various contacts and suspicious contacts between people associated with Confusion GPS and Trump team members. So he points out that Confusion GPS being involved in the Papadopoulos setup, the setup of Carter Page, which was also an attempt to set up Stephen Miller as well, but Stephen Miller declined the invitation. Carter Page did not, and that's how he ended up in the crosshairs. Caputo and Stone being approached by this individual, Mr. Greenberg, who turned out to be an FBI informant, who was in the country. He's actually Russian. His name's not Henry Greenberg. That's an alias. He has 3 aliases and his own real name. He is a Russian. He's a former Russian guy with a very, pretty long criminal history, violent criminal history. He entered the country on a visa, a special type of visa only given to FBI informants. And he was the one who tried to set up Caputo and Stone. And then, of course, he talks about the Trump Tower meeting with Trump Jr., Kushner, and Manafort. And the one thing that all of these have in common is every one of these attempted setups all had the same identifier. They were all these informants or what have you who were trying to get Trump team officials, Trump team members, to bite on damaging information on Hillary Clinton, dirt on Hillary. This is every single one of these. This is what they were. This was the bait. Hey, how would you like some dirt on Hillary? Every single one of these was offering dirt on Hillary, and these were all being manufactured completely or in part by Glenn Simpson. He was involved in all of these setups. Particularly the Trump Tower setup was his main. I think, and I suspected for a long time that was Glenn Simpson being behind that. Now, as you know, now here's another important fact that this is new information here that I didn't know about. So, as I mentioned before, Papadopoulos was set up when they invited him to Cambridge. Now, in that same invitation, they invited Stephen Miller, but Stephen Miller declined. He did not show up, but Carter Page did. So Carter Page shows up here to Cambridge. He was invited by the fat man, Stefan Halper. So Halper invites Miller and Page. Miller declines. Page shows up to this symposium in Cambridge. And at that symposium, Carter Page is engaged by the following 3 people: Richard Dearlove, Stefan Halper, and Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. So here we have another situation where Downer and Halper are together. So I didn't have this, but it's right there. Dearlove, Halper, and Downer all engaged Carter Page at this event in Cambridge. That is very damaging for Down the Hatch Downer, who continues to say that he was not part of any kind of plot. My friend, when you're hanging out with Stefan Halper, you're involved in some damn plots. So Lee Smith puts all the pieces together and concludes that Glenn Simpson was behind the Trump Tower setup. And he also links this to one of the proto dossiers that we talked about yesterday, because in one of the proto dossiers written by Simpson and parts of it by Nellie Orr, Aris Agrilov is mentioned. He's the Azerbaijani real estate tycoon developer. And of course, that was his link to Goldstone. And Goldstone is the one who sent the email luring Donald Trump Jr. To have this meeting where they brought in Vetselnitskaya and Rinat Akhmechan, and Goldstone was there. Agrilov and his son were there. And that was the setup by Glenn Simpson. And we also learned from this chapter in Lee Smith's book that Christopher Steele was working for the FBI before he was brought in to work with Confusion GPS. So he was already working with the FBI. Wow. There you go, my friends. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See ya. Bye.